Hello, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching TVP World. Our guest today is Dr. Paweł Pońsko from the Warsaw School of Economics. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So Poland estimates its World War II material losses at 1.3 trillion euro. That is a lot. But is the amount of is this amount we're talking about only caused by the German occupation or also by the Russian or Soviet invasion?
Well, this is the amount which was published in the report. The report was published on the 1st of September 2022, and we took special care to be able to say that those losses were solely caused by the German occupation and German invasion. And apart from this, there were more war losses caused by the Soviet army, by the Soviet occupation, but those were not included in this number.
Right. Poland didn't, eventually, after World War II, Poland didn't lose any land, any territory to Germany. Quite on the contrary, it gained some. Well, it lost some of its territory to the USSR. But how to evaluate these territorial losses?
Well, this is a question that could be tackled in different ways. From my point of view, or maybe the way I would do this as an economist, then you would probably want to know how much of the GDP, which is the welfare that the society can use and can produce, was generated in this part of the country. Then if you compare it to the country that Poland regained, not gained, but regained, please remember that those lands that now belong to Poland and they did not belong before the Second World War, those are lands which were occupied by Germany before because they divided Poland with our neighbors. So
yeah, but you know, it's quite questionable when we're talking about cities like Wrocław, for example, and you know, other most western parts of nowadays Poland, they belong to Germany for many centuries, and we're not just talking about the partitions.
Oh, well, okay, but when we go back, then we can say that all those lands are ethnically Slavic lands.
Yeah, anyways, absolutely.
So if we want to go backwards in the history, then we will get to the point where we'll see that these are all Slavic lands, right? Anyways, so this would be the comparison. And actually, in the report, since this question is asked quite often, quite frequently, there was some rough estimate done to compare the value of the lands, and then the lands Poland regained or got from the German occupation on the west were worth more or less a quarter of what we have lost on the other side in terms of the value of the land. So this definitely is not compensating for the losses in terms of lands on the one hand, and there's by no means it should be treated as some compensation for the damages Germans caused during the Second World War.
Right, and what about cultural losses, things Poland lost in the fire of World War II?
You mean, well, so cultural losses, that's quite a broad aspect, because on one hand we have lost a lot of pieces of arts and buildings and historical buildings, etc., and those can be somehow estimated in terms of their value because there is a market for art, so you can see how much this could be worth. Probably it would be better to regain the original piece rather than the money, but anyways, this could be compensated. But on the other hand, the cultural losses also means that this is something that is connected with the intelligence in the well-educated Polish people who actually pass the knowledge about Polish culture to their children, etc. And during the Second World War, the German occupation in one of the aspects was very much directed to actually wipe out the Polish culture and the well-educated part of the society because of that, right? To try to completely wipe up the nation, basically. And this is something that is very hard to estimate how much it is worth. But also, and that's quite important thing I would like to stress, it is a very long process to rebuild it again if there is no these real elites of the country, which give example to the rest of the people, which show how important is Polish culture, etc. And then the rebuilding, well, that's a process which is happening now. Right. And it's not easy, as you can see.
Right. So here we come to the question of human losses. Well, Poland lost millions of its citizens, and well, can we really put it in terms of money? Well, now, after so many decades after the war, I guess there's no other way but how to evaluate Polish losses in the populace, right?
Yes. So as you show in the report, the German occupation cost more than 5 million people, 5.2 million people we lost to German occupation. And then the question is, and this question is quite a broad and academic question, how to evaluate human loss in general, because on moral grounds, it's actually we are not able to say how much money.
But you know what I mean. It's people who make the GDP, right?
And then that's where I'm heading to, is that the approach the economists usually do is they say, okay, but we have this, clear way of computing value in economics in general. We use national accounts. We know that the main variable is GDP. So let's see how much those people were worth in terms of how much GDP they could generate, right? Which is the income they would be able to generate with their work and they use as the citizens of the city. And this is how it was computed. And chapter number 3. My colleagues, Professor Staudinger and Baranowski, they did great job of taking account on the people, not only those who lost their lives, but those who were disabled and couldn't work anymore, so they couldn't be a part of the labor force. Those people who were taken as slave workers to Germany, so their work was not paid, but they were working for Germany and generating their welfare instead of generating Polish welfare, etc. There is a lot of aspects that should be taken into account. And we had this major strategy for the report is to build our computation as clear as possible and as much in line with what is done nowadays in terms of economics. So that's what the colleagues did, and it's pretty clear and well explained.
I see. Now, we know that Germany is rather reluctant to pay a single penny to Poland in war reparations. So where should Poland seek justice?
Oh, there is a lot of way to answer this question. But on the one hand, first, let's realize the fact that GDP, let's say just the income that we compute as a measure as a GDP, we are not going, even if the Germans pay the money, we are not able to give this money on the level of living to all those people who lived up to now after the Second World War and during the Second World War when the income was taken away from them. Okay? So in Poland, in fact, it's more than 2 generations. Right, really. So this is one thing. And then this also means that we now, being a member of the European Union, having the trade connections with better developed countries, we can develop faster. That's true. But then if not for the losses, then we would be starting from a much higher point. And with the development that we have, we would be ahead, way ahead than we are now at this point today, for instance. So this is one reason why. The other reason is that if we want to live in a civilized world, and I'm sure you would like to, and many of us would like to, then it would be nice to create incentives which would protect us from this kind of barbarity which happened to Poland during the Second World War. And this means that if somebody does things like Germans did over the Second World War to Poland, I mean, devastating the country basically completely, then it should be accountable for this, and there should be a mechanism which makes them pay, and this would be a very good lesson for all the other countries which would like to do the same in the future.
I guess you're referring to the current situation in Ukraine, right?
For instance, and this will, because what I'm trying to say is if we create this kind of binding agreement that you actually will have to repay those devastation that we caused, then every country which would like to be in the international community will have to take it into the cost of the war. That afterwards it should be paid.
I
right?
guess so. But then on the other hand, Russia has, nearly $300 billion in frozen assets in the Western and Europe and in the US. And none of the politicians is willing to make a decision about it. I mean, to use this money to compensate Ukraine's losses, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not that easy.
Well, I mean, that's cost-benefit analysis, right? Because some people still think that they can benefit much more from the friendship with Russia than actually from protecting Ukraine. And probably Russians took this into account too. So it's basically the question is where the cost will be higher.
I see. Let's get back to the Polish or German reparations for Poland. So 1.3 trillion euros in reparations. That the sum is exorbitant. But do you think that Poland will ever receive even a fraction of the sum?
Well, I believe that Poland should receive all the money. And now, let's put it this way, because you have said that this number seems enormous, but this is a number in euro for 2021. Nowadays, a year later, with the inflation, it's already bigger, and it's counting. And it's not because we are counting; it's because the inflation happens, and that's why the value of money changes over time. And then this is also a small number if you compare the actual economic cost which was caused to the people during the Second World War. Because when you think about a Polish family which was taken, thrown away from their home was demolished. Everything they owned was demolished. They, either they were in a concentration camp or lived somewhere, just for trying to survive. Then the alternative cost for them, it is much more than just the cost of a consumer good. Mm-hmm. And if we take the losses from Second World War and index this not with the inflation of US dollar, as we did, as that's a normal thing to show the contemporary value. But if we take into account the alternative cost, as economic theory would say, then this valorization would be many times more. Mm. And if you take into account that Germans not only took away the income... Mm-hmm.
I see what you're getting to. Poland is actually acting quite mildly.
Absolutely. There is no excess in the...
With Germany, right. Our guest today was Dr. Paweł Pońsko from the Warsaw School of Economics. Thank you
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching. That's all for now, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.